Joining us now is Laura Sobiak. She lost her son to cancer nearly a year ago, but not before his short life touched millions of people. She details some of that story in her book, Fly a Little Higher. I know your son through the song Clouds, as millions of people do. Tell us about how that song came about.
Well, I'd asked Zach to write goodbye letters to family and friends as a way of just leaving a little piece of himself for us after we found out that he was terminal. And he tried, but it just wasn't coming out the way he wanted it to. And a few months after I asked him to write the letters, I was cleaning up his enormous mess because he was a huge slob. I ran across the lyrics of Clouds. And when he got home from school that day, I asked him about it, and he said, yeah, I've recorded it, and then let me hear it on his phone. And it was just such a heartbreaking song, yet it was joyful too. And I just, loved the song and what he was saying through it.
And we'll go up, 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 but I'll fly a little higher. Go up in the clouds because the view's a little nicer.
And lots of people rallied around that song, professionals as well as just friends, family, strangers.
Right.
Why do you think that happened?
I think that was people who were hearing with their hearts and saying yes. And that's how our story has been. And it's really interesting because these are seasoned professionals who've been in this industry for a long time. And we're all in awe and very aware that this is beyond us.
Now that song hit #1, what, 2 days after his death?
Yeah, #1 on iTunes, made Billboard charts. It was amazing.
It's a gift that keeps on giving.
It really is.
Really it is.
Yeah.
Now, when your son was first diagnosed with cancer, you said that you knew this was going to be not only a physical journey, but a spiritual one. What were some of the spiritual lessons you pulled from this?
Well, I think in our faith life, we spend so much time in prayer and study, and I really felt like this was sort of the summit of all of that preparation. And I think the lessons that we learned are, it's okay to suffer. If we suffer through God's grace, God can use that to live in the present, here and now, and look for the joy in this time that we've been given, and not let it be squashed by the future that might never come. So those were the big lessons that we learned.
Beautiful. Now you have 3 other children besides Zach.
Yes.
How do you navigate taking care of him through this entire process and still being a full-time parent to the other 3 with your husband?
Right. It's tricky. And I do touch on that in the book. I tried to be real honest with how difficult that can be to navigate, because one of the things I really don't want people to think is that we're a perfect family and that, well, we could never do anything like that because they're perfect. And that's not the case. And it was tricky. I mean, time needed to be juggled, but ultimately it came down to we wanted to stick together, and so we made it work. We talked, we communicated, we argued, we worked it out, but we were smothered in prayer. And I know God's grace was just with us and keeping us together.
Now, I know going through this again to write this book had to be difficult for you and your family. Why did you choose to do it?
Well, because I knew we had a story to tell based on the response that Clouds received. I mean, just that alone, there's a world out there hungering for hope. And I wanted to share the rest of Zach's story because I think there's more there that people will draw from. And our primary goal really with everything was to raise awareness about this disease and to raise money for it. That's the real practical goal here too.
Tell us more about the disease that affected his life. How many people does it impact?
Well, in the United States, there are only about 450 kids that are diagnosed a year, so it's considered an orphan disease. It's underfunded as far as research goes. And I just think it's, that was another God thing, that we live a half hour away from a hospital that has a team of doctors whose primary goal is to sort of crack open this disease and figure out how to cure it. And then we can help. So it's called osteosarcoma. It's a rare form of bone cancer.
Yeah. And of course, you never heard of it until your son's diagnosed.
No, of course not. No, and but what a blessing that Zach's legacy can save other kids in the future too.
Indeed, indeed. He was a strong man, just from the little I know about him from watching stories and listening to his song. What did we not see about him?
He just, he was born empathetic. And I think that really served him well in his battle with cancer because it allowed him to turn outward rather than inward. And not that he didn't have his moments where he was on the brink of despair. He did. But he didn't want to stay there. And I think that's an important lesson that he taught me. You can wallow in it if you choose to, but he chose not to and chose to affect people around him instead.
Wow. Tell us about those final days. What were some lessons you pulled in watching him go through the end there?
You know, I think we hear so much, especially in the Christian world, about eternity, and that this is just sort of our gateway to eternity. And a lot of times those are words that we don't necessarily internalize. And with Zach, in his last days, I got to witness that, what that looks like. And it's really beautiful. And not maybe so scary as we think it might be, you know. And he was at peace. It was hard. Physically, it was difficult, but there was peace in our house, too.
Wow. I imagine this doesn't get any easier for the family as the year gets...
That's what we're finding. You know, grief is a funny thing. It's not necessarily, it's kind of a cycle. You know, you cycle in and out of those really hard days. You're fine for a while. And then, you know, of course, this is almost a year since Zach passed away, so all of these anniversaries stir all that up again. And we miss him, but we feel him. You know, he's still close.
Indeed, indeed. Well, thank you so much for your time. Happy Mother's Day to you. I know this must be a difficult time for you as well, but you have an amazing son with an amazing legacy. God bless you.
Thank you.